Okay, here in this video, we're going to go over our short expository assignments. These assignments are the most weighted of all your assignments throughout the semester. They're going to consist of about 1 to 2 paragraphs, and they're mostly going to be focusing on Eric Foner's chapters. You're going to start off by having an expository question from Eric Foner, and then you're going to respond with a short expository answer. In this writing rubric that I'm going to be showing you, the first thing I like to go over is that claim sentence. That claim sentence is worth 15 points. It's the most important part of your response. It is going to be one sentence. It can be a very complex sentence. The sentence is going to answer the question directly with a subject. Who are you talking about? And what point needs to be made or proven throughout your writing. Usually these are questions of intention. Why is someone doing something, or why is a group doing something? They can be a compare and contrast, or they can explain a cause and effect. And these are the usual dynamics that are used in history for expository. The next thing is, once you've made your claim sentence, the next thing you need to do is prove it with the text. You shouldn't be going through any other type of resource except for Eric Foner in the chapter that we're using. And because we're using specifically that chapter, all I need from you is quotes, and I know that you're using this chapter. There's no need to cite pages or any of these things. I just need that quote. Usually 1 or 2 quotes would do the best. 1 being it's a powerful quote. 2 means you may need a little bit more support to add to support your claim. The next thing is the 5 points. Once these 2 are pretty much set, this one kind of rolls along easier. This is usually going to be your tougher one. What I'm going to need you to do is explain how the quotes and your claim connect. That you're just kind of restating, but it shows me that you understand the content, and it shows me that you're just not pulling quotes. You're using logic in order to finish your assignment. And the last thing is to elaborate. Like, this is a little bit more open here, where you're making a point for yourself about what you're picking up, how things connect with other ideas that are in history, or other similar topics that you may come across when you finish your short expository paragraph. The 1 to 2 paragraphs depends on your writing, depends on how precise your sentences are and how precise you're using the vocabulary. Students that are very good at making good sentences with the right type of vocabulary can make short 1 paragraph responses. Students that need a little bit more elaboration on their writing and description sometimes run into 2 paragraphs. Very rarely will you have to move into 3, but if there is a case that you feel you need to be 3 paragraphs, that's okay also. So we're going to do a little bit of practice before I have you independently work on your expository assignment, and I'm also going to go over one further in this video. So let's go ahead and look at an example of expository question. The expository question here and the reading that we're going to be using is coming from Howard Zinn's History of the People, his first chapter on Christopher Columbus. The expository question is, how has Christopher Columbus' experience with the social structure of the Old World influenced his interaction with the Arawak natives? So I know that Christopher Columbus comes from the Old World, what was driven at the time by feudalism, and I know that Christopher Columbus, based on the previous video, is a lower class commoner. He's not of nobility. So the question is, how is his status going to influence the way he interacts with the Arawak Indians when he arrives in the Caribbean? And so Howard Zinn first writes, Arawak men and women, naked, tawny, full of wonder, emerged from the villages onto the island's beaches and swarmed out to get a closer look at the strange big boat. When Columbus and his sailors came ashore carrying swords, speaking oddly, the Arawak Indians ran to greet them, brought them food, water, gifts. He later wrote in his log, "They brought us parrots and balls of cotton, spears, and many other things, which they exchanged for glass beads and hawk's bells. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built with good bodies, hands, and features. They did not bear arms, and they did not know them. For I showed them a sword. They took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want." Here in this section it reads from Howard Zinn, "In return for bringing back gold and spices, they promised Columbus 10% of the profits, governorship of all the newfound lands, and fame that would go with a new title, Admiral of the Ocean Sea. He was a merchant's clerk from Italy's city of Genoa, a part-time weaver, a son of a skilled weaver, and an expert sailor. He set out with 3 sailing ships, the largest of which was the Santa Maria, perhaps 100 feet long, and 39 crew members. So here in this part of Hao Zhen's chapter, we have an excerpt from Las Casas, who's a Spanish priest who's there along with, who had gone into the Indies and started to record some of the things. And he was pretty appalled by the way Christopher Columbus and the men had treated the Native Americans. And in his report, he writes, "Endless testimonies prove the mild Pacific temperament of the natives. But our work was expiated. Revenge, kill, mangle, and destroy. Small wonder then if they try to kill one of us now and then." The admiral, being Christopher Columbus, it is true, was blind as those who came after him, and he was anxious to please a king that had committed to irreparable crimes against the Indians. Las Casas tells how the Spaniards grew more conceited every day, and after a while refused to walk any distance. They rode the backs of Indians if they were in a hurry, or they were carried on hammocks by Indians running in relays. In this case, they also had Indians carry large leaves to shade them from the sun and to fan them with these goose wings. Total control led to total cruelty. The Spaniards thought of nothing of knifing the Indians by the 10s and 20s and cutting slices off of them to test the sharpness of their blades. Las Casas tells how that 2 of these so-called Christians met 2 Indian boys one day, each carrying a parrot. They took the parrots and for fun beheaded the boys. Okay, so what I have here highlighted in purple is the expository answer to the expository question. It's going to be a claim in one sentence that isn't necessarily a summary, but a point that needs to be made. The subject is Columbus. When Columbus felt that his technology gave him an advantage, he immediately wanted to subjugate them into servants so he and his men could create a privileged class like the structure in Europe. So here is my answer. Now I need to support this from the text. I like this quote here that would most support this text over here. They have no iron, their spears are made of cane, and they would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subject them all and do whatever we want. In this case here, I'm using Christopher Columbus's own words instead of Howard Zinn. So these make very powerful support when they come from a primary source that is offered by Fauner or any author that's given it to. I've highlighted this in green because it gives me some background information of what I want to elaborate. He is looking for this new title of Admiral of the Sea, and Howard Zinn does make a point here that he's the son of a skilled weaver, and he's also a part-time weaver. So no matter how great he is at being a sailor, and he is a very good sailor, he is not nobility. So this action here is one of the few times someone in Europe has this opportunity to become a noble. Okay. And then lastly, we have this on the reading here, this other excerpt here, that Las Casas, tells how the Spaniards grew more conceited every day, and after a while refused to walk any distance. They rode on the backs and were hurried and carried with the hammocks of the Indians running in relays. This gives me a good indication of the fact that they wanted to act certain privileged. You have other reports mentioned earlier about how deadly they were, how violent they were to the Native Americans. But here I'm more concerned with that claim sentence earlier about how do we support that claim sentence. The fact that they wanted to seem like nobles and the fact that they carried that out. So to remind us of our expository question, how has Columbus' experience with social structure of the Old World influences interaction with the Arawak natives? My answer would be when Columbus felt the technology gave him the advantage, he immediately wanted to subjugate them into servants so that he and his men could create a privileged class like the structure in Europe. Howard Zinn doesn't necessarily say that outright. It's being implied, and the question drives you to this conclusion. So this isn't a summary. This is a point of his experience and the actions of that coming from there. So the support that I have from the text, that first paragraph, we have Christopher Columbus's own words, and then later on we have Las Casas talk about how they grew conceited every day. And here is my explanation and elaboration. My explanation is going to be in blue, and my elaboration is in green. Columbus and his men came from a world where few men of privilege lived as nobles, such as kings, popes, and royalty. In the culture of this world, he would never have access to this life, but his journey offered him an opportunity to gain a title that no commoner could ever achieve. When he reached the New World, he saw how vulnerable the natives were. Both he and his men could not resist using their weapons to turn them into servants. And here's where I elaborate. Many people have been very critical of celebrating Columbus for his treatment of the natives, while Howard Zen also makes a point to remind us that his actions can be seen as a man driven by his culture and expectations of the time. So if I were to put these things together, and as you're writing, you can split the stuff up, but what I would like is a paragraph when all of them are connected. As you can see, I have my expository answer, I have my two quotes, okay, and then over here I have my explanation, and lastly I have my elaboration. Notice how, guys, that when these two connect, when you have a good support, when you have a good a claim sentence and you have the support, this is a matter of summary of what you have up here, and to help me make sure that you have the logical connections of those two. And then lastly, the elaboration is more of your point, something that you see coming out at you as you're doing your assignment. Okay, and so if we were to highlight this and remove the highlight, and also remove our that would be the way our expository paragraph would look like. So for this week, I would like for you guys to practice elaboration. Notice here that I'm reading something and I'm reacting to it, and we're going to practice our elaboration on discussion boards. I'm going to have a list of quotes from this chapter, and you're going to read the quotes, and you're just going to tell me something about what's going on there. This isn't a matter of writing explanation or finding support or any of these things. This is just to give us some good practice on you seeing something from the reading, and you're making a point about it. Not a claim, just a point. And you're very free to make your point, as long as within reasonable sense. So here my point is, yes, you can be critical of Columbus, but you have to keep in mind of his historical drive of the time that he's in there, and that gives us a clue to our world today in terms of being able to it's sort of metacognate or self-reflect on how our society and the stresses of our society are playing a role in our actions throughout time. So anytime in history, we're dealing with human beings. Everyone from Christopher Columbus to Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. You want to go all the way to Julius Caesar. Human beings are more flawed than they have where they do something extraordinary in history. So especially when you're dealing with men of history who make things happen, it's very easy for us to be critical of them in terms of the violence that they may ensue or the changes that they have. But we also have to be reminded of what battles are they fighting. What are this pressure coming from them? When Christopher Columbus goes on his trip, he's already in debt. They pretty much make him pay back the voyage, but then that puts him in a bind when he doesn't find a lot of gold. He ends up using the natives as slaves. So a lot of the historical stresses, not only do you have to keep that in mind, but you also have to keep it in mind in terms of what are the same patterns going on with us today in our society. So to recap, your assignment is going to be on discussion board. I'm going to send some parts of this reading, and you choose one and you elaborate on it to practice with the elaboration. And I'll go in and let you know if the elaboration is on the right direction. Okay. So this is pretty much expository. You're going to get a little bit more practice before we send you on your own on this. And if there's any questions, I will have our on Blackboard, our message board will be up, just in case you have any questions for me. Okay.